Perfect. Well, good morning, Monica. Thanks so much for joining us for our Creative Industry Season live discussions. It's great to have you.
Great to be here.
Yeah, and you've been such a wonderful audience member coming and checking out our other chats too. So I know that I think you're probably ready for this. But just a little background and preface for the folks joining us today. I'm Shawnee Harvey. I'm the Creative Industries Director for the New Mexico Creative Industries Division. And this is our Creative Industries Season live discussions where we have been connecting with creatives and creative entrepreneurs across the state to kind of hear about their perspectives, their observations, and their stories, and just really getting to share space with you all to understand your take and your experience in the New Mexico creative economy, and also looking at ways that we might be able to work on collaboration moving forward, right in line with our theme of collaboration and creativity. And I'm joined this morning by Monica Poling with Cultural Tourism Strategy. And I'll hand it over to Monica if you want to give us a little bit of background about you, maybe tell us a little bit about your creative journey and what inspired you to kind of start Cultural Tourism Strategies.
Great. Nice to meet everybody. Thank you all for coming. I, I'm the classic avid traveler and have been with my family since very young age. But one of the things that differentiated us was that we were always looking out for the rural and off the beaten path experiences. My family really didn't like, even before the internet, even before, email, we really didn't like to go to the heavily touristed places. We'd much rather eat at a roadside cafe. And then eventually, after I graduated from college, I didn't realize that tourism was an industry. You could actually get paid to work in tourism. So once I learned that, I was like, wow, this is perfect for me. And actually, one of the attendees here today, Carol Martinez, she was one of my very, very first colleagues, we'll just say many years ago. And she and I together launched the original cultural tourism program for the Los Angeles Convention and Visitors Bureau. This was like 3 decades ago. And again, before internet, before email, before mass communications were super easy. So we literally drove around LA finding cultural centers and museums that were just not well known and chronicled them in a series of guidebooks. And so that pathway has followed my career through. I've been a journalist for 10 years. I've worked for various tourism organizations, and I've always just really been fascinated by the the creative industries in general, but specifically how important they are to driving and building economies, local economies. It's just underrepresented how important creative industries are in building economies.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's this really cool overlap between tourism and creative industries where they both kind of intertwine and drive each other. And
Yeah.
that's what, it makes people interested to come to different places. And especially in New Mexico, that's a huge piece of it. But maybe can you speak a little bit about how New Mexico's creative landscape has maybe influenced the work that you do here in New Mexico and the approach that you've had to take in terms of maybe just collaboration and doing your work? I know you mentioned a different state, so I'm sure that moving into New Mexico and kind of having to shift perspectives there, I'd love some insight on that.
Definitely. I moved to New Mexico about 8 years ago. I had been attending a lot of tourism shows, and I met at a tourism show, the American Indian Alaska Native Tourism Association, which is based here in Albuquerque, and they offered me a job. And really, kind of after being 30 years in my place, I dropped everything and within 2 weeks had relocated and become a proud citizen of the land of enchantment and have never looked back and really have, like, it was the best move. I have no regrets of moving here. And having worked with Native communities for 4 years, and again, Carol and I did that a little bit back in the day, but really being focused on helping Native communities build a tourism economy where so many Native nations in New Mexico and beyond, they live in some of the poorest communities. They live in, not poorest, but lowest income demographics. They struggle with keeping their creative talent because the creative talent wants to move away to bigger cities. And tourism has really been a pathway to bringing in dollars, first of all, from visitors. It has been a pathway to training their youth because now the youth has a reason to stay locally. And that's not just indigenous communities, it's all cultural tourism. But when you provide jobs through your cultural centers, your tour operator operations,
Mhm.
your food trucks, your culinary arts, it just generates a whole revenue for the local community. And we just see that throughout New Mexico, that places that might not be on the radar but suddenly they have this, this whole thing that people didn't realize that's part of their story, part of their fabric. And it's really a way to easily create some promotion and some energy by celebrating your artist, celebrating your art walk, celebrating your food that is really uniquely local to your destination.
Yeah, yeah, and especially for New Mexico, our nation's tribes and Pueblo communities are just integral to our identity as a state, but also huge to our creative industries and our tourism driving. So like, um, it's
It's
really
true. I
important.
mean, the Swaya, the Southwest Indian Market, I mean, that's one of the largest Indian markets in the nation, obviously, gathering of nations. And I mean, and beyond native nations too. I mean, obviously, Balloon Fiesta, all those creative festivals and industries that celebrate the creativity of the state are just so intertwined with tourism. I mean, I like to say that a state's creative people are really the differentiator. Like you see a lot of people promoting on, I've got these great restaurants, I've got dim sum, whatever, but really the state's creative people are what differentiate. Ultimately, that's what brings people into a state is the people, the balloon rodeo artist, the turquoise artist. I'm wearing my New Mexico turquoise today. The turquoise
Mhm.
artist, and it's the artists that really are bringing people because they're defining what the state is and how people should perceive it and experience it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that, Monica. So I guess another question that we've got is, as you know, our theme for this year, for Creative Industry Season is the collaboration and creativity. And you talked a little bit about working with our nation tribes and Pueblo communities. I'm wondering if there's any other collaboration that you've been part of, or if you'd want to dig in a little bit more to tell us about navigating some of that and how it's had a lasting impact on your business potentially.
I think that one of the creative partnership, and right now, actually through this series that you've been hosting, I've been following with all your speakers and just introducing myself as a collaboration. So this has been really amazing for me personally and professionally.
Awesome.
And the first one you had, I think, was a futurist, I think is how she called herself. And
Yeah.
like, so I don't know that I would say there's I've been fairly entrenched in the Native community, so I don't know that anything has sort of existed beyond that because that's my background. But this series has really opened up for me a whole new series of conversations beyond that. So that's really been amazing. And I'm already meeting with a few people that have been been hosted in this session. So that's been
Yay.
great for me, that just to, kind of help. One thing that happens with a lot of individual creative providers is there's not a lot of great messages about how to market yourself. And when you
Mhm.
look at how to build a marketing plan, everybody's using the same tired start with a problem, solve a problem advice. And that advice doesn't apply to creatives, right? You're not solving a problem, you're creating beauty, and it's a different message. And so that's one of the things that I'm trying to bring to the partnerships. I'm like, we can revisit what marketing looks like for creative types and make it easier and not so high level and inaccessible.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure we're going to get to talk about one of those a little bit
Oh,
later here. I'm excited to
sorry.
bug you
Oh,
about
sorry, I
that
jumped
one
ahead.
too. Oh, no, no, not a
Segue,
problem.
as I do.
Um, yeah, no, that's exciting. So I guess I wonder a little bit to that. As you said, marketing as a creative and for a creative business is completely different than traditional
Right.
business. And when Arlen and I are in community and talking to creative economy folks and creatives in general, we notice that there's a lot of folks who have fantastic ideas, and sometimes they just don't have like the team behind them, or they're not talking to anyone else about how they can work together. So I'm wondering if you have any advice that you would give to creatives who want to collaborate but don't really know where to start.
Yeah, I mean, I like to first of all start with being really clear about what you do. A lot of creatives put their name up, but then they might like let their artwork or their photograph speak for themselves, like, oh, you do pottery, but it doesn't say it. And an image in terms of explaining to people what you do is not enough. It helps and it's good to have images of your artwork, but
Mhm.
really being that, like, that's the first step. And so many creatives miss it because they're afraid of bragging or sounding salesy or whatever, but really creating like this is what I do and this is why it's important to me. And I think that really already starts to drive the message forward for creatives. Like, don't neglect that part that is so critical to bringing people in, because Google likes it, the social media sites like it, your visitors like it. So creating that, and then really just once you have nailed that, everything else is easy, because once you've nailed why people should buy from you or work with you or like your art, you've kind of already you've already accomplished the most important thing in your marketing plan, which is explaining the why, and then creating a simple, sustainable program where you're going to every day I commit to doing one thing or two things, and that's it. And then now I go back to doing my creative work, which is really what I want to do,
Yeah.
and avoiding the marketing that I don't like doing so much.
Yeah. And so many of us have to wear hats that we might not
Yes,
desire to wear as creatives because yes, we can create what it is we're going to create, but in terms of marketing and getting bookings or finding options for those trade shows or making the connections, we sometimes land in that business space. We have to be the social media marketing expert. We've got to start doing the email, web design, all these things that we try to avoid early on because a lot of
right.
creatives just want to create, like leave them to doing their thing. And I think a lot of the work that we're going to be doing in the division moving forward is trying to connect folks to those services and providers that can help ease that that work because it's not the most straightforward and a lot of people want to get back to what they like to do.
Which is yeah, what they're good at. The other thing that I recommend always is that there's this sense that you have to make the sale in the first post, right? The first social media post is buy now, do this. And
Mm,
really, like, your marketing should be like any other relationship building. Most people are not going to buy on the first post because they've had 700 other posts conflicting. So if you're building that relationship where you're not someone who's hard sales, but rather, hey, if you like my art, follow me on Facebook or TikTok or LinkedIn. Ideally you start a newsletter as a creative because then you have the ability to control your messaging to your people when it goes out. But just having that ability to forget about sales, which is another thing that a lot of creatives hate. They hate the idea of, marketing really is a function of sales, and they
yeah.
get stymied by buy now, and the message kind of gets pushy or incomplete. And forget that. Just like, hey, I'd love to stay in touch and talk about art and why you love art and why I love art. And that starts again, everything else falls into place once you consider people like I'm in that relationship building phase, not I must sell to you today, right now with this post.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, there's also a piece around, I think adding value is a big thing for entrepreneurs and businesses right now is like you need to provide something to the customer who you want to buy your product or service in the future, even if that's a creative piece, you have to provide something upfront that makes them feel like they have received value so that then you
Yeah.
can continue to build that relationship and then actually convert them. And I think for
Yeah.
a lot of creatives, that free value comes from the entertainment and solace that we can provide through our social media platforms, right? Whether that's
Yeah.
scrolling memes or someone creating really beautiful, like I follow an Instagram page that does like these pastel flower, tiny little canvas, really entertaining. And I was like, oh, okay, I've seen these enough times that I want to buy one. And then I go to the site and it's sold out. So
Right.
there's ways that it can absolutely work.
Right.
And I think it's just getting in that groove and also, having to plan for it because some people want to do things every day and
Yeah.
sometimes it's realistic. Sometimes you need, me and Arlen talk about it, like you need a content day where you're going to do your content creation and then,
Yes.
there's ways to make that world easier.
Yeah.
So another question for you, and you kind of spend a lot of time in that email marketing world and really knowing kind of that online environment, but I'm wondering if you have any perspective on how you see the role of technology playing a role in collaboration and how
Right.
that's shifted and how we can kind of actually use those tools to maybe help bolster the way that we connect with others and collaborate as opposed to it being a hindrance where we're all now only staring at a screen in our own little world.
Right. Get locked away. It's the creative types. We're all stuck looking at our computers all the time. And so, I mean, it's an interesting question because there's so many ethical concerns right now. I mean, we've seen all that Studio Ghibli art
Mhm.
mock-ups that are going. And I mean, it's opened again all kinds of questions about copyright and so I think because of that, AI and technology tends to be a turnoff for some creatives because oh my gosh, if I get into it, people are going to steal my work or and you know what? Yeah, that's a possibility. But I think it not using the tools that can help you is also could hurt you as well. And there's a lot of ways that technology can make your life easier. I mean, you could create an entire marketing plan with free tools, Canva, Notion, HubSpot. Like I pay for very little because I'm too small to really need the bigger portions. So the great thing is that technology has opened all kinds of ways to really help you get heard and get noticed. AI in particular, I think if you stop thinking of AI as a tool for creative content writing and art and a tool for strategy, that's really where, like, what I do. So, I saw a provider that I liked online, and I was like, oh, cool, she has some really cool clients. So I copied her clients and I went to AI and I was like, she has a different field, but could you create a list of similar clients for me that I should outreach to based on
Mhm.
her? Like, it was a lot of foundations she worked with. And so now AI has given me like a target list of people I should reach out to sort of
Yeah.
myself. And artists could absolutely do that. Like, give me the top 20 galleries in New Mexico that might be interested in indigenous art, or might be interested in plein air, or might be interested in abstract or pottery, or whatever your area is. Give
Yeah.
me give me three messages I can use for when people visit my booth at Swaya. Like, what are three different things that I could talk about? And AI is, the more you give it information, the more it's going to customize it to you. So it might give you a generic thing the first time around, but if you say, well, I really focus on landscape themes and a history of my grandparents, et cetera, I love culinary, and you give AI that information, it will come back to you with really great talking points. So even
Yeah.
if you're shy or you're not great at networking, you memorize two or three sort of sound bites and then use those to carry you through your conversations with strangers.
Yeah, that's really, really great, actually. And I think definitely for AI, the secret there is the prompt and the input and
Correct.
what we're providing and how specific we're being. So I do think that that's a really, it can be a great tool, but there's that two-sided, right? And we're going to be navigating that for the foreseeable future. So we're
We
going to
are.
have to figure it out. And, you brought something up in your last response around, sometimes creatives are hesitant to lean into technology because they're worried about competition, copyright, intellectual property violations. Those are all very valid. And that
Yes.
same hesitation comes when we're talking about just collaborating with other creatives because we get worried about our ideas and our projects. And um, it's a conversation that we've been having, and one of the pieces that I mentioned, and I think you were at the networking event too. You did. On one of the panels, I had mentioned like there's always going to be like the competition's not necessarily going to go away, but we're also stronger when we work together. And the
Correct.
differentiating factor is when people have that integrity and authenticity behind what they're doing, someone can come along and copy it, right? Even with the Studio Ghibli art that we've been seeing in the different memes, it's like that's true, but can that someone then take those images and create the same kind of compelling storyline and music and invoke the same sort of emotion that we get when
Exactly.
we watch those kind of films? Because that you're going to have a hard time because that's a huge team of creatives that do amazing work. So it's hard to replicate that.
Yeah,
Um,
I
yeah.
agree. And it definitely is. I like to say that awareness protects copyright. And like, when Mike Tyson, he did all the face things, and not as many people knew about Maori art, so he kind of got away with it, right? But
Mhm.
when Kim Kardashian came in and tried to copyright the kimono, the whole world went bonkers because everyone already knew the kimono doesn't belong to her. So
Mhm.
hiding your art for fear of getting stolen or bogarted, it's going to happen anyway. When one way or another, it could happen. Hiding it doesn't protect you. Being open about, this is my idea and here it is, and then when people know that you are the originator, it's much easier to protect your art in the long run because it's obviously been stolen or borrowed or replicated for nefarious purposes.
Yeah, and there's a lot of contingency planning that folks can,
Yeah.
do around a lot of that. And then I think it's also beautiful because my thought is like, holding on to your creations, and I have this as like a quote on my Instagram page, but like holding on to your creations and not wanting to share them with the world is like waiting for new air to enter your lungs when you're still holding your breath, right? And it's like people
Correct.
want to see your creativity.
I
So
love
many
that.
of us want to wait to put it out there. Um, because we're worried about what comes afterwards. And I
Yeah.
think that getting over that hump and taking that leap of faith is one of the best things that creatives can do.
Yeah.
And on that note, I'm wondering kind of how do you think that creative businesses in New Mexico can work together to not grow just individually, but as a collective creative
Collective.
economy as we're kind of like moving in?
We're finding more and more that the more you collaborate, the better. And it's one of the things I love about tourism. Like, I've worked with so many people over the last few decades, and no matter where they are, what city, what destination, what country they are, we still stay in touch. We still help each other. We fuel each other. And it's a little bit, it can be the same in all creative industries where like one of the things you see is a famous artist will talk about, oh, here are the five up and comers that you should look out at Squire, right? And so it's that it doesn't harm you to reach out to someone who is ahead of you in the game and be connected to them because you don't know where that collaboration can come from, and they know the struggles you're facing. So if you're reliable and you're kind and you're a good person and you have beautiful art, they're going to be willing to help you promote. And so I think there's, yes, there again, there's always going to be opportunities for nefarious purposes, but for the most part, the creative industries get out there and collaborate. And like if it's expensive and time consuming to advertise. If five of you build a little collaborative or a art walk or something, or our favorite food on Isleta Boulevard, right? Like you can build something together and have all of you be promoted. And you just don't know where that might get picked up, or a media might see it, or somebody might share it on social media. But it helps alleviate the pressure on you to do all the work, spend all the money, spend all the time on making that happen. And and if you're really, really worried, you don't want to collaborate with another watercolor, then pick different mediums. Pick a
Mm.
tapestry artist, pick a ceramics artist, pick, like a filmmaker and a video game could connect and come up with ideas. But I think it's just really travelers, they don't want to do one thing. They want to do lots and lots of stuff. So the more you can give them new ideas, and that comes from collaborating. So like, hey, while you're in New Mexico, here are the 6 must-see artist communities you must visit, and then be in tune with them and be genuine about not just promoting yourself, but everybody as a collective.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great piece of advice to kind of like stretch too and bring in
Yeah.
different mediums, like diversify the creatives you're working with because you can build something so much bigger. And that's the beauty of like, which we exclude film activities that are promoted by the New Mexico Film Office within our creative industries division, due to kind of just how the statute was written. But that's why film is such an amazing, and cinematography is like such an amazing thing. It brings together all these different forms of creativity in this culmination of like something beautiful that can sometimes blow our minds. So that's always exciting. I've got two more for you here
Sure.
before we open it up to our audience to see if they've got any questions. And I just want to say if you all have questions now, feel free to put them in the chat and we will get to them. And just circling back around to Arlen's comment that AI prompts are like genie wishes, and the more details, the less room there is for error.
Yes.
You got to be specific because any room leaves it up. So, Monica, what do you think is one piece of advice or one thing that you would want fellow creatives to walk away with after today's conversation?
I would say that my top piece of advice is don't skip the marketing. I know a lot of creatives like just go to a trade show or just go to their comfort zone and do that only. And that might work. But if you really want to grow, if you really want to be representative of the state and its beauty and its amazing wonders, you're going to have to market yourself. And so, kind of figuring out a way. And if that's every day from 8 to 9, I'm going to do something, I'll outreach, I'll send, I'll put a social media post, but get into a cadence where you are comfortable with marketing yourself and understand that when you see people who suddenly blow up, they didn't blow up by accident, that it was a concerted effort that they reached out and they just tried a lot of things. They failed in terms of marketing. They failed at a lot of things in terms of marketing until they found the thing that worked for their time, their energy, their persona. I mean, not everything work. Like LinkedIn may not work for most of the creative industries in New Mexico, because a lot of creatives aren't there, but
Mhm.
TikTok may. But you're just going to keep trying until you figure out what works. But show up every day and do something every day and just get in the mindset that, if you want to grow and you want to gain some acclaim or some fame or some notoriety for your work, you have to do the work. It's not going to happen by magic.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of marketing yourself and not taking that step, I know that you, with Cultural Tourism Strategies, you've got this really awesome email marketing playbook that you actually provide as a freebie to folks who might sign up for your email list. And that's kind of how you're providing that value. But it looks like you've done a bunch of great work on providing relationship building strategies for creatives and folks who are in these kinds of sectors. And I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about that. And we're going to make sure that we plug it in our upcoming newsletter and then provide it as well in like our resource center. So keep an eye out for that. But could you maybe tell us a little bit about that?
Thank you. Yeah, I think that for me, and I know email marketing is work, I know that, but I think that if you are only promoting on social media, you are letting social media decide when your message goes out, who sees your message, and you're effectively promoting to strangers over and over and over again. And in the beginning, when you don't have an email list, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But rather than going to social media and saying, I want to sell. I'm going to sell right now. As I mentioned, that's not going to happen. But if you're like, hey, I'd like to stay in touch with you, you talked about like adding value. As an artist, you could say, hey, 15 spots to photograph in New Mexico that nobody knows about, 15 places to do plain air watercolor. And the only way you can get that list is give me your email and creating this extra value that people, 10 places you can get amazing pozole, 10 places you can, whatever your thing is that you want to be known for, you can create that value. And so I've lost track of the question already, but basically just kind of creating the relationships by offering value to the people that you want to work with, because they are going to remember you for that value. They're going to remember you for that art. Whereas a single TikTok post or two every so often is not going to drive that awareness. So really getting into the habit of your posts are less about selling and more about, hey, I'd just like to stay in touch. And which of my art did you like? Can you offer me any value, any feedback on what I'm doing? So that would be my number one thing. And if that's possible to create an email list around that, that's really going to be the strength in your marketing.
Yeah, and would you say that your playbook that you provide for folks kind of goes into that in detail? So if folks are interested, we're going to drive.
It's very detailed. I'm actually going to send you another one because I just created a marketing plan one and it's much more entry level. Like it literally has Mad Lib style. Like here's how to write your about statement, and it has some chat GPT prompts. And I think it's the other one is very high level. It's kind of at a organizational level. It might be too
Mhm.
much for some. But anyway, I have both, and people, they're welcome to download either one for free as they like.
Awesome. And they can find both of those resources at monicapoling.com, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Awesome. Well, and on that, I guess you mentioned that you have another marketing playbook kind of coming out, but is there any other upcoming projects or opportunities or events that you'd like to share with us before we?
I think that sort of is the gist of it right now. I have a couple things cooking, but they're not quite. I had hoped to have bigger announcements today, but I think that the other thing that I'd like to say is I'm also a mentor for SCORE. So if you are looking for free mentorship, even if I can't help you, we have an amazing team at score.org, and score.org/Albuquerque that we have free webinars. I'm doing a webinar free next Tuesday on content marketing. And there's sales webinars, there's how to get funding webinars. There's just a lot of really great content. So even if you're not requesting me as a mentor, go over to score.org and check out their page, score.org/Albuquerque, and check
Mhm.
out there. And there's a Santa Fe, if any of you, there's also a Northern New Mexico chapter as well.
Yeah, SCORE is a really cool organization. They bring on professionals who provide free mentorship to aspiring and entrepreneurs in the community.
Yeah,
So if you all are not connected with that, and that'll be a great resource for creatives too. So maybe we need to recruit some more creative professionals into that SCORE network so that we can
yeah.
get some people. But
Definitely.
absolutely. Well, Monica, thank you so much. I'm going to turn
Thank
it
you for
over
having
to
me.
I'll see if our audience has any questions for you before we wrap things up. But I don't see anything yet in the chat, so we can kind of give it a moment and
I do
see.
not either.
You must have provided so much value that no one has any additional questions.
Right. I did have a question on LinkedIn if this was going to be, I know you're recording it. Oh, are you recording it? Oh, yes. Are you? Okay, great.
Yes,
And so so I know a couple of people had asked, will the recordings be available? So that's more
absolutely.
for
What
you
we'll
than me.
what we'll probably do is they'll end up on our YouTube page for the New Mexico Economic Development Department. And I don't know if we'll do that on an ongoing basis or towards the end of the season.
Okay,
And then there's the whole consideration of, does creative industries need its own YouTube channel, or do we continue to stay housed under EDD? We have all of the live conversations and discussions from last year's creative industry season
cool.
on the economic development page. So I imagine that we'll continue to loop them there for now. Um, yeah, but let's see. We've got a question that says, do you have any recommendations to build a stronger resume for tourism related work? Our company has lost several tourism RFPs to out-of-state competition, coming in very close behind them. I know this is a slightly different conversation, but wanted to check with your expertise.
So I do sometimes to, earn my bread and butter. I do write RFPs. And so this is actually kind of in my area. And I think the one thing is RFPs, a lot of them are just, especially from government entities, they're just based on budget. So sometimes out of state, they somehow manage to finagle a, more
Oh,
affordable
yes.
proposal. So sometimes that's it. But the other thing that I would do, and that's what this is the first thing I recommend to my client, is gather quotes and pepper your RFPs with how successful you were at doing your work. And really, like I work with a lot of clients who like to use a lot of adjectives. We're very, very capable. Like, okay,
Hmm.
let's not talk
Show
about
me
that's
how you're capable. Yes.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And showing not just, oh, we worked with the state of New Mexico, we worked with the city of Albuquerque, but here's a quote from Shani that says how thrilled she is with our work. And so, it's a very brief answer to a very complicated question, but I would say that just making sure you're really demonstrating, if it's not just based on price, you're really demonstrating why people love to work with you and what results you've driven for them. And that is just, but sometimes losing the proposals just, it's a hugely competitive 20, 30 groups are now, outreaching to one proposal. I know, I'm sure you had, Shani, a lot of proposals come in for your grants too. And it's just hard because there's so much competition. But
Yeah.
Nicholas, you can also DM me on LinkedIn if you have more questions. I'm happy to chat with you too, but.
Yeah, and my perspective on that as well is whether it's an RFP, a resume, or a grant application, it is that piece where, like, yes, you say what you did, but are you showing us how you did it? Are you talking about, like, it's a lot about the demonstration of the project success in the past or the business success in the past. And I think even especially with, like, I've sat on the other side of, like, doing the grant review, doing the hiring, and looking at even for people's resumes, it's like they'll talk about what the duties were and what the responsibilities were, but not how they perform them, any of the measurable outcomes. So a lot of times quantitative information can be really helpful when you're talking about RFPs. And
Yep.
I think there's the storytelling component and there's the experience component, and they want to see, recommendations, and there is kind of an art to it, and it is, it's ongoing, and it's just a highly competitive, like Monica said. So I think that there's a lot of nuance there, and when you're competing against groups that are used to writing RFPs, there's also an opportunity, especially with RFPs, because those are government, those are, yeah, federal and state. Those are public records. So a lot of that can be, hate to say it, but a lot of that can be IPRA'd, right? You can request that information, so you can actually see who, like, the winning applicants were. They might have to take out identifying information, but sometimes you can request that information. They might
Yeah.
not do individual feedback on why you weren't selected, but what you can say is, can I see the scoring, or can I see the um, winning proposal? And that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. And you can use a lot of that, but that would be my thought.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with all of that. One thing I've started doing in one area that is not tourism, and it's highly competitive. A lot of the businesses are completely offshore. They're out of the country. So one
Mhm.
thing I've started doing is adding quotes from the employees, how much the employees love working for that company, because ultimately the government doesn't want to work with someone from Switzerland or someone from Brazil, right? They want to work with preferably someone local. So if you start talking about how the local person is happy, they love their job, it
Mhm.
demonstrates that you are working with local people.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you everyone for tuning in.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you everyone for being here today, and for the questions, and we super appreciate it. Keep an eye on our Facebook and Instagram page for the New Mexico Creative Industries Division. We'll kind of be doing these in shorter reel forms, and then we'll get the full recordings up probably on our YouTube page here in the near future. But thanks so much for your time, Monica, and happy Friday to you. Happy Friday to everyone. And we'll see you at 1 o'clock for our other live discussion if you would like to join us for that one too. And take care.
Thank you. Take care.